A massive power outage caused chaos and panic in Spain as the entirety of the country was cast into darkness on Monday. Parts of France and Portugal were also affected. Jorge Gonzalez-Gallarza, you're a fellow at the Center for Fundamental Rights in Madrid. Welcome to Riks Europe.
Thank you so much for having me, Ilya. It's good to be back with you.
So what are some of the feelings and thoughts that the people of Spain are having right now about this incident?
Well, I think right off the bat, I think there's no sugarcoating this. There's no way to get around the realization that this has been the worst power outage that Spain has had, and that much was already clear already just a few hours into the outage. But it went on for 12 hours, and what we're seeing now in retrospect, and I think this feeling is going to consolidate and become stronger as the days go by, is that this has been not only the worst power outage that we've had in this country, but also one that has been due to just a reckless set of energy policies, and we're beginning to learn more about why that was. And I guess just for your audience, I'll just recollect or recall some of the things that we already know. So as you mentioned, at 12:33. Essentially all power went out across Spain, and as you mentioned, not just Spain but Portugal and parts of southern France, and 55 million people were left in the dark, and this lasted for about 10 to 12 hours. So power hadn't been fully restored to many parts of Spain until midnight, and actually some of the major train stations, for instance, in Madrid, have just recovered power a couple of hours ago, and that was actually one of the major problems, I think, and this whole saga was train traffic, road traffic. Just think of it. In downtown Madrid, I would, walk out of the office and you would have essentially large roads with no traffic lights and cars just trying to, squeeze in between other cars and pedestrians not knowing whether they could walk in. The traffic lights were out. So air traffic was another huge problem. The airports were a huge mess. And essentially, again, this was a full-on blackout. So I think many blackouts that tend to happen in other parts of the world have parts of the economy that remain alight, whereas in this case, it was only emergency rooms and hospitals that had stocked generators and could perform medical work while this went on, whereas the whole rest of the country was out of light. And what I want to remind, though, to your question, is that there was less of a sense of lawlessness, and yet there was a great sense of panic. So you did have long lines at supermarkets for people wanted to go in and hoard food because they were already in sort of preparing for a scenario where this would go on for days, and also the government's promises that they could restore power weren't always believed. So people were ready to go on like this for days. They were trying to hoard food. There was a few bouts of lawlessness. There were some marauders in the streets. When the streets went pitch dark, you had petty crime, petty theft, but mostly you had panic and worry. And I think we're going to get into it. We're going to get into this, but that has a lot to do with the lack of trust in the government.
Now, there's been a lot of speculation in the worldwide media about what actually caused this, and they've been ranging. These explanations have been ranging from cyber attacks to unusual weather phenomena. And as you mentioned, there's some criticism towards the Spanish energy system, and I believe the Red Eléctrica, the national grid operator of Spain, has actually more or less attributed this to an over-reliance on renewable energy sources. But what is it that we can say for certain about the cause of this major catastrophe?
Yeah, so I found that very interesting as well. Is that in the very beginning of this, the hypothesis or even the conspiracy or the theory of this being a cyber attack was pretty viral. You had a lot of people while they still had connection on their phones, because for a little bit at the beginning it kind of went on and off, right? So the memes that you would see shared and the memes that went viral were of Vladimir Putin shutting off the lights, right? So people really did believe that this was a cyber attack, but the cyber attack theory has been disproved as of now. Even the Red Eléctrica, which you mentioned, the power grid authority. So it's a part private, part public operator of the grid, and they've had a team of technicians look into it. And the cyber attack theory that some people were peddling has just been ruled out. Now, what I found very interesting at the beginning is that while people were still entertaining the possibility that this was Vladimir Putin, there was much less talk of this being about the energy mix and the fact that Spain has spent the past 20 years on this energy transition, on this course and race towards ever more renewable energy production going into the grid. And we knew, or experts at least knew, that this was creating major risks. And yet people didn't seem to instantly link or correlate what we were living through with the policy failure. And that was very revealing to me. I mean, when you think of it, this has been a tremendously effective brainwashing operation. Because yes, you did have experts in Spain, energy economists, physicians, engineers, private operators who had been for years warning that, with Spain being one of the greenest energy mixes, that this was a real possibility. In fact, some people didn't say that it was a possibility. Some people said that it was a foregone conclusion, that it would eventually happen at some point. And yet in the public conversation, we just didn't seem to take that into account, because I think that the green lobby and green interests and green ideology has just been so effective in brainwashing people, and we just weren't listening. And now I'm hopeful that this, and I'd like to think of this as a sort of a solar Fukushima, as a sort of an energy disaster that should help us swing the pendulum, not just in Spain, but globally, towards a re-embrace of nuclear energy. And I think we're going to get into it down the conversation. But I think that people are now waking up. They're realizing that, and this is beyond doubt by now. I mean, there's essentially the green lobby is conspicuously silent right now. Nobody from that corner is putting out theories, although the government, the prime minister, has said that this is nothing to do with the lack of nuclear and with excess solar energy. But essentially experts who know what they're talking about are all agreeing that this has to do with excessive reliance, as you said, on unreliable renewable generation. So I think, yeah, hopefully you're going to have a bit of a wake up in Spain. But what I'd love for there to be is a global wake up, and for this to become the evidence that we were waiting for, to say, like, whoa, this transition has gone way too far.
The current Spanish government, a very left-wing government, has invested a lot of resources into the green transition, and making sure that renewable energy is on the top agenda when it comes to energy supply. Do you think that this will damage the government politically if they continue to, promote the green agenda?
Well, so I think it's really interesting. The energy politics of a crisis like this would have been totally different in any other country. In Spain, this is being filtered through a few elements that are very specific to our country, and one of which is the polarization, the political polarization, which kind of muddles the diagnostic, right? It's pretty evident to the experts what has happened, but the politicians and the ruling politicians and the green politicians are not being forthright. So I think you have that theatrical polarization that happens in Spain, which is going to make it harder for the world to know what is actually happening here. But yes, I think, look, there's no way around it. I mean, what has been proved to be a failure has been the last 20 years of green policies in Spain and the transition towards a system in which, by the time the blackout happened, as much as 70 to 80% of power being inputted into the grid was coming from solar and wind. That was an all-time high. So that's why you had this, is because, as you said, there was a surge, there was an overheating, a tension of solar energy and wind, which, as you know, and as your audience knows, these renewables, you can't easily plug them out of the grid. You can't plug them on and off the grid like nuclear or gas. So they're plugged into the grid, and when there's an overheating, it just creates a surge and a blackout. So yes, I think that it's becoming very clear in people's minds that it is the green zealotry, the green radicalism, the green fanaticism, the green transition brought to a to a fanatical endpoint that is to blame. And on the other hand, this has come at the expense of the renewable sources of energy, which Spain could have built, the nuclear power plants. We used to have more nuclear power plants. 2 power plants were closed. Now we have 5 nuclear power plants, and they're operating at half capacity. They could have stepped in and balanced out the fluctuation, because they're easily pluggable in and out of the grid, but they're essentially at half capacity, and they're also heavily taxed. Some of them are warning that they will go bankrupt. So to your question, there's no question, there's no doubt that it is this green radicalism that's been indicted, that's been proven to be a failure, and I just really hope that the world's going to wake up and realize and use this as evidence that, hey, listen, the pendulum has swung far too back, and it's time to take a few steps back and put some of that reliability into the way we consume energy.
Thank you so much, Jorge Gonzalez-Gallarza, for your comments here on Riks Europe.
Thank you so much, Elias. It's always a pleasure, and I want to thank your audience for taking an interest in what happens here, and have a merry end of the week, you all. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Riks Europe.